We often believe that happiness will find us when life calms down, when the storm has passed, when everything finally goes our way. But true happiness doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. It's not a reward after the struggle. It's a choice we make in the midst of it. Happiness is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of perspective. It's learning to pause, to breathe, and to say, even in this, I choose peace. I choose gratitude. I choose joy. It doesn't mean we ignore the pain. It doesn't mean we smile through heartbreak or pretend everything is fine. It means we honor the difficult, but we don't let it define us. We let it shape us, strengthen us, help us grow. Because every time we choose happiness in the middle of hardship, we build resilience. We train our minds and hearts to seek the light, even in the darkness. And that is strength. The truth is, life will never be perfect. But our response, that is always in our hands. So don't wait. Don't postpone your joy. Choose it now. Practice it every day. Let happiness be your quiet rebellion against the chaos. Because in the end, happiness is not something we find. It's something we become. Love beyond the swipe. On emotional maturity, self-awareness, and building genuine relationships. Stop throwing money at psychologists, relationship coaches, or self-proclaimed dating gurus, selling you the fantasy of easy solutions. I'm going to reveal the true secret behind a happy relationship, and it won't cost you a single penny. The secret I'm talking about is exactly the same as what these experts use. The difference is that they package it, market it, and sell it, as if you don't already possess it. But the truth, you already have it. It's just a matter of learning how to use it. It's time to reclaim control over your own emotional life. In a world where words are used to mask actions and where seriousness has become the adornment of the evasive, there exists an uncomfortable truth that few dare to speak of. There is a gap, not between what we say we want and what we actually get, but between the words we utter and the energies we emit. This gap is the greatest denial of ourselves, and it keeps us trapped in a game where we seek what we are not ready to give. This video is not for those seeking a shortcut. It is for those willing to pause, confront what lies beneath the surface, and understand that true intimacy requires more than just wishing for it. We will talk about self-deception, about all the patterns we use to avoid true intimacy, about how we repeatedly project our unfulfilled dreams onto others without confronting our own wounds. But we will also talk about hope, because it is only when we see ourselves in the mirror with honest eyes that we can begin to meet someone else, not as a rescue, but as a kindred spirit. This is an invitation to feel more than you explain, to encounter more than you control, and perhaps for the first time, understand that love is not something you find, it is something you build, in openness, in consistency, in courage. We will explore psychology, personal development, and soulful presence, 3 keys that open doors to deeper self-understanding. By integrating the mental, emotional, and spiritual, you will gain tools to strengthen your well-being, understand your patterns, and live more in alignment with your truth. It's not about fixing yourself, but about meeting yourself with curiosity and courage. You will gain access to evidence-based methods and mental techniques to break limiting thought patterns, strengthen self-worth, and create inner security. Relationships are also in focus, especially the one with yourself. We highlight communication, boundary setting, and authenticity. The goal is not perfection, but truth. Change begins within. When you take responsibility for your thoughts and choices, life changes. We use affirmations, reflection, and conversation to awaken the power you already carry. There is no ready-made recipe here. Your path is your own. In a world that values appearance, we invite depth, presence, meaning, and self-transcendence. To live with purpose rather than status. To choose truth, even when it's hard. We live in a time where history repeats itself, but we can break patterns. By choosing strength in peace, not only in crisis. Your strength is visible in the small choices: to believe, to stay, to choose respect. Many chase love to fill a void, but true love begins within us. Self-respect, conscious relationships, and freedom in the possibilities of single life create space for authenticity and healing. The strongest relationship is the one you have with yourself. When you live in alignment with your values, you flourish, regardless of the relationship. Life is not a problem to solve. It is a mystery to live, and here, we live it, fully. When wholeness begins within you, about love, boundaries, and conscious choices. Being alone for a long time changes you. You learn to enjoy your own company, to laugh, cry, and heal on your own. The strength you carry was formed in pain and solitude, not comfort. You have grown, found wholeness in yourself, and no longer seek someone to fill a void, for you are already whole. When such a person lets you in, it is a choice, not a need. They seek truth, not games. Love built on peace, not chaos. If you're not ready for that, step aside. But if you are ready to grow, be whole in yourself, and love genuinely, then you have found something rare. In today's dating world, it's not just about finding someone, but about how you show up. Many carry the lesson that love must be earned, which leads them to compromise themselves. But a healthy relationship is a collaboration, not a solo effort. Boundaries are not cold, they are respectful and clear. In a superficial culture, self-respect and authenticity are more important than ever. Affirm yourself. I am enough, even when I'm not trying to impress. Being able to say no when you need to is courageous. You deserve the care you give to others. Be yourself, fully, and meet someone who does the same. Psychological insight helps us understand why we repeat patterns. Our choices are often driven by unconscious wounds, not logic. But with awareness, you can break these cycles. Freedom is about choosing consciously, and when you do, you create something new. Then the life you dream of becomes reality. Genuine relationships. Why they take time and why they're worth it. Finding a genuine person isn't about following an exact timeline or a predetermined process. It's about slowly building a deeper understanding and an authentic connection between two people. And that takes time. Time, patience, and most of all, mutual commitment. For some, it might happen quickly. For others, it takes months. But regardless of the pace, there's no universal template. The only thing that matters is being aware of the process, not rushing through it, and daring to be present in what's unfolding. Meeting regularly can be a sign that something is developing, but that alone isn't enough. A relationship only becomes genuine when two people can fully be themselves, without fear of being judged or pressured into something they're not ready for. Vulnerability, honesty, and courage are needed to open up, and respect, attentiveness, and patience are required to receive the other. Research in social psychology shows that it takes between 3 and 12 months to build a genuine relationship, depending on factors like attachment, trust, and the quality of interaction. So it's not about how long you've known each other, but how deeply you truly see one another. The strength of a relationship doesn't reveal itself in the easy moments, but in how you handle the hard ones. That's when you show whether you can grow together, if you can communicate respectfully even in conflict, and whether you choose each other even when it's not comfortable. Building a genuine relationship requires both giving and receiving. It's about creating a sense of safety by getting to know each other's values, needs, and emotional landscapes. The more you see each other's vulnerabilities and choose to stay anyway, the deeper the bond grows. But it also requires that you feel secure in yourself, because you can't truly feel safe in a relationship if you're not first secure with your own emotions. True intimacy begins within. It's easy to feel swept away when you meet someone who feels right from the start, but authenticity takes time. The initial chemistry can be strong, but it's only when you see each other's real selves, flaws and all, and still choose to stay, that something real is built. So no, there's no exact moment when a genuine person enters your life, but there is a way to meet them, by being present, open and honest, by not chasing a relationship, but building one, slowly, with intention, because when that genuine relationship does finally grow, it will be worth all the time, energy, and patience you've invested. It won't be perfect, but it will be real, and in a world full of surface, that may just be the most valuable thing of all. Love is not a swipe, it's a meeting. Saying you're looking for something serious has become a mantra in the dating world, but the words themselves often mean less than we think. In fact, they can sometimes reveal something else, an inability to show genuine presence, warmth, and intention through actions rather than phrases. Just like calling yourself funny doesn't make anyone laugh, declarations of seriousness rarely spark emotion, unless backed by authenticity. At the same time, apps like Tinder have changed how we meet, how we flirt, and how we believe connection is formed. But behind every swipe lies another reality. It's no longer about finding love, it's about staying in the chase. Dopamine, validation, habits of empty contact that feel like something, but are rooted in nothing. Someone who truly wants to connect deeply creates a feeling, not a slogan. It's not our bios that create bonds, it's the way we show up. It's in our consistency, our presence, our capacity for vulnerability where seriousness truly shows. Not through phrasing, but through atmosphere. Yet it's precisely this atmosphere that gets sabotaged by the system we're often in. Tinder uses a psychological mechanism called variable reinforcement, rewards that come unpredictably. You never know when the next match will appear, and that's exactly what makes it addictive. We swipe, we hope, we repeat, and we say we're looking for something real, while being shaped by a system that trains us to become emotionally detached. This is where communication becomes crucial. Many get stuck in gut feelings, impulses, and unspoken hopes, instead of meeting reality with clarity and reflection. We start saying things like, a serious relationship, something casual, I'm not sure yet. We click, we choose, we categorize. But the real problem doesn't lie in our choices. It lies in everything that can't be boxed into options. Algorithms can track behaviors, but they don't understand longing. They don't know if someone chooses serious because they're emotionally mature or because they're scared of being alone. They can't tell if not sure yet is an excuse or a raw, vulnerable truth. They don't hear the heartbeat behind the swipes, and they can't tell if all you're truly seeking is one thing, someone who stays when it gets real. Many say they want closeness but avoid openness, say they long for stability but act like the dopamine rush from uncertainty is more important. We want to be seen, but we're afraid to show ourselves. We're reduced to profiles. We become choices on a menu. But love is not a checkbox. It's not a feature. It's not a filter. It's something we build together when we dare to meet as humans. In the dating phase, many keep doors open and relationships parallel until one of two things happen: physical intimacy or emotional deepening. But that's exactly where something more is needed: honesty. If feelings begin to grow for one, while the other is still exploring, it must be voiced. Not because feelings demand a commitment, but because withheld truth at this stage easily becomes betrayal. It's not about feeling too much, it's about not knowing enough to feel safe. Sometimes it becomes emotional neglect, even infidelity, not in actions, but in the lack of truth. We say we want closeness, but learn to live with distance. We start believing the next swipe is the answer, but what we're really doing is running in circles. And the saddest part, we start blaming others. She ghosted. He wasn't serious. They just played with me. But maybe we're ghosting ourselves. Maybe it's us avoiding the one thing that can break the cycle: honest presence with ourselves. We often forget that it's expectations, not love, that hurt most when they shatter. We paint pictures in our minds, build visions of relationships that will heal, fulfill, save us. But when the other person doesn't match what we've projected, the illusion collapses. Sometimes it's not the relationship that breaks, it's our unmet fantasy. We asked for love, but maybe what we really asked for was compensation for old wounds. And even real love isn't enough for that. It doesn't start with deleting the apps. It starts with understanding why we use them. Daring to ask, am I in touch with what's real in me? Am I truly seeking a partner? Or am I seeking validation? Am I escaping something? Or am I ready to actually meet someone? Because even if the matching algorithms get smarter, no technology can replace the inner work of a human being. The most compatible person in the world means nothing if we're not in contact with ourselves. If we chase surface when we truly long for depth. If we filter out people who don't fit a mold, when what we actually need is to break the mold entirely. That's why it takes more than desire. It takes maturity, self-awareness, mutuality, because love isn't about filling a void, it's about sharing your wholeness. A mature partner doesn't look for someone who plays the role of the perfect one. She or he seeks a human, present, grounded, honest, someone who doesn't just say the right things, but is right in how they live, feel, and show up. Writing exactly what you're looking for can sometimes limit more than it invites. Leaving it unsaid doesn't signal confusion. It can show humility in the face of the unknown. And maybe it's exactly there, in the spontaneous, in the uncertain, that the most real things are allowed to grow. So dare to meet without ready-made answers. Dare to stay in what feels uncertain, because true compatibility isn't something given, it's something met. Love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly on paper. It's about the courage to build something real, together. So no, the right person isn't a swipe away. They're an honest conversation away, and that conversation begins with you. You are not your feed. You are not your facade. You are the presence behind all of that, and it's time you start living accordingly. In today's dating climate, where swipes, filters, and polished facades dominate, we've lost touch with what matters most, human presence. We've started to believe that we are our profiles, our angles, our likes. But let me be clear, a picture can capture attention, but never depth. A bio might spark interest, but it will never reflect your inner value system. We've created a system where we show windows, but not doors. We present versions, not realities, and that comes with consequences. When we fall for appearances without stepping into depth, we confuse attraction with compatibility. We think physical chemistry is enough, but we forget that what sustains a relationship is emotional safety, shared values, and authenticity. But it goes deeper than that. We live in a society where pressure, comparison, and distraction shape our self-image. Social media has become a hall of mirrors where we constantly scrutinize ourselves against illusions of perfect lives. We start to believe we're not enough. We doubt ourselves. We lose our grounding in who we are and begin shaping ourselves after what gains approval, rather than what feels true. We build relationships from need, not presence. We seek love to avoid feeling empty, and that's where we begin to compromise our integrity. That's dangerous, because then we stop meeting people and start using them as mirrors, as anesthesia, as projects. We create relationships based on lack, not balance. And here comes the brutal truth. It doesn't matter how attractive you are if no one can reach what's real in you. It doesn't matter how many people want you if no one knows you. You might get attention, you might get admiration, but if it doesn't lead to genuine connection, it's just an illusion of closeness. At the same time, we're seeing a different movement emerge. Those who choose something else, those who don't play games, those who don't seek likes, but connection, those who build their core on reflection, emotional maturity, and self-awareness. For them, Authenticity is not a strategy, it's a filtering system. When you show who you truly are, you naturally filter out those who were never meant to stay. It takes courage, it takes presence, but it saves you years of self-denial, shallow relationships, and inner conflict. So here's my honest advice to you. Stop trying to be perfect. Stop adapting just to be chosen. Instead, start showing what actually matters. Who are you when no one's watching? What do you stand for when you're not trying to impress? Who are you in silence, in uncertainty, in longing? Because that's where real relationships are born. Not in likes, not in clever one-liners, but in eye contact that doesn't waver, in vulnerability without guarantees, in the courage to say, "Here I am," not to impress, but because I am worth being seen. Post your photos, write your bio, be proud of yourself, but never let the profile become the person. You're not a shop window, you are the whole house with depth, layers, and real value. And the one mature enough to walk through the door is the one who deserves to stay. Stop chasing the perfect. Start building the real. In a culture where we're constantly searching for the perfect person, we need to pause and ask a crucial question. What is it that we truly value? It's easy to get caught up in quick impulses, assumptions, and rapid swipes, believing we know who someone is based on a photo, a pose, or a bio. But let's be honest, do we see their joy, or just a curated facade? Do we truly understand them, or are we filling in the blanks with our own fantasies? Many people don't feel free in their appearance. They feel trapped by it. Behind smiles and flawless profiles often hide loneliness, performance anxiety, and a hunger for surface-level validation. For many, dating has become a pursuit of instant stimulation, not a journey towards something meaningful. And when we enter relationships to fill a void in ourselves, rather than to share from a place of inner abundance, we create imbalance. We idealize, we project, we don't see the person, we see who we want them to be. But those who truly understand the value of love play a different game. They choose long-term connection over fleeting highs. They build relationships grounded in respect, shared values, and self-awareness. They don't flaunt their wounds, but they've learned how to heal them. They're not dependent on validation. They've built internal safety. Ask yourself, is it really their appearance that makes them attractive? Or is it their boundaries, self-respect, and emotional integrity? Because your self-worth isn't determined by how you look, but by how you treat yourself. Your value isn't in how many choose you, but in how consciously you choose. And yet we compromise. We let desire drive our decisions. We follow lust over logic. We chase validation, and then wonder why the emptiness remains. But how can we build something real on a foundation of emotional impulses and unrealistic expectations? Love is not euphoria. It's not passion without direction. It's not chemistry without stability. Real love requires deep grounding. Without it, we risk building relationships on illusions. We crave intimacy, but land in hollow interactions. We search for meaning, but get stuck in surface. It's time to break that cycle. So here's my message to you, as a coach, as a human, as someone who's seen this again and again. Stop building relationships on potential. Start building them on reality, not to impress, but because you're finally ready to be understood, for real. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover. In our world, we tend to categorize and judge without truly understanding or exploring. But when we stop judging by the surface and open the book, we begin to see the world with new eyes. At first, we might not understand everything, but as we read again, we find sentences that speak directly to us. Every time we return to the book, we discover new insights and lessons. It's like a friendship that grows and deepens over time, where the book not only provides answers, but also raises more questions. The more we read, the more we realize it never really ends. Every time we open it, we find new perspectives, and new truths about ourselves and the world around us. So next that you feel like judging something or someone by the surface, remember that the real value isn't always visible at first glance. Take the time to truly read, understand, and discover the deeper message, because you might have found a book that will follow you through life. When the body becomes the message, on contemporary objectification and the gaze that shapes our culture. Objectification is not a new phenomenon, but in our digital age, it has taken on a more refined, seductive, and at the same time deeply destructive form. What was once limited to advertising campaigns, music videos, or pornographic settings has now been integrated into our everyday lives, disguised as empowerment and self-expression. It is no longer primarily reproduced on the periphery of the media, but in our feeds, in our galleries, at the gym, and most visibly, on Instagram. Instagram has become the digital catwalk of our time, a virtual arena where bodies are displayed in aesthetically calculated angles and filters, under the guise of health, strength, or self-love. The platform functions as a global locker room where the female body, rather than the woman herself, takes center stage. It is a stage where each post is a performance, each image a statement, and each pose a subtle interplay between control and submission. At the same time, this image culture is permeated by a paradox. Those who claim to post for themselves often do so under an invisible but ever-present filter of external validation. In reality, much of the visual content is curated for a particular gaze, a gaze shaped by decades of cultural conditioning. The male gaze, which Laura Mulvey defined in the 1970s as a structure that, through media, reproduces women as objects, has been internalized. It no longer belongs exclusively to men. It is now also the gaze of women themselves. The danger does not lie in a single selfie, but in the volume, in the sheer number of images that together create a silent norm, a norm where the value of the body is reduced to its visibility. In a system where likes function as social currency, bodily exposure becomes a means of gaining visibility, validation, and ultimately self-worth. This is not freedom, it is an invisible captivity. Behind images of strong women sometimes lie fragile inner landscapes, a psychological dependency structure where the pursuit of attention replaces the presence in one's own self, a self that has gradually lost its inner gaze and replaced it with an external one, constantly observing, never satisfied. From a neuropsychological perspective, this has far-reaching consequences. Susan Fiske and her research team at Princeton University showed that when men viewed women in tight or revealing clothing, brain regions typically used to process objects, not people, were activated. At the same time, activity in areas that enable empathy decreased. The woman ceased to be a human being and became, neurologically speaking, a tool. This is not biology, it is learned behavior. This learning starts early. While boys are raised to act, perform, and solve problems, girls are taught to be sweet, pleasant, and visually appealing. Appearance becomes a language, not a trait. The body is reduced to a medium for affirmation, rather than a home for self-experience. Objectification. Theory shows how women learn to see themselves through the eyes of others. This leads to a psychological split, where the body is experienced from the outside rather than the inside. Exercise, which once expressed bodily freedom, becomes a project of visual optimization. The waist must be narrowed, the butt lifted, the muscles defined, all according to a social script that promises appreciation in exchange for exposure. But what is the long-term cost of this transaction? Women's connection to their own bodies is eroded. Flow states become harder to achieve. Sexual autonomy decreases. Self-compassion breaks down. Empowerment becomes an illusion when self-objectification is disguised as self-expression, and when women, under the pressure of cultural encoding, themselves reproduce this ideal. It is not a sign of weakness, but a tragic consequence of a system that has taught them their primary capital is visual. We must dare to speak about this without blaming the individual. This is not a moral issue, it is structural, existential, and psychological. Women's choices are not made in a vacuum, but within a cultural ecosystem governed by the gaze. And this gaze is not neutral. It is shaped by commercialism, patriarchal structures, and centuries of aesthetic exploitation. True liberation does not lie in the right to expose one's body, but in the freedom not to have to. It's not about hiding the body, but about reclaiming it, as subject, as home, as a foundation for inner experience and integrity. To train for strength, not for looks. To live for presence, not for visibility. To reconnect with the body as a space to inhabit, not a surface to display. Change begins with awareness, in making the gaze visible and understanding its power. It's not the leggings that objectify. It's the culture that teaches us that bodies gain value through exposure. And it is this culture we must confront, with clarity, respect, and humanism. The pursuit of highs, when dopamine replaces the depth of intimacy. Did you know that the brain of men who repeatedly seek quick dopamine hits through sex, via one-night stands, Tinder hookups, or pornography, actually undergoes rewiring? Every time you receive a sexual reward without emotional presence, the brain is trained to crave more of the quick fix, not the deep connection. A pattern forms, almost an addictive state, where the pursuit itself, the validation, the rush, the high, becomes more important than the real encounter with another person. Over time, sexuality shifts from an expression of closeness to a behavior that regulates the nervous system. It becomes a way to avoid, rather than deepen. The dopaminergic reward system, where the neurotransmitter dopamine plays the main role, is activated by the anticipation of reward, not by the satisfaction itself. The brain quickly learns to associate sexuality with the chase, rather than with belonging. And the more this pattern repeats, the stronger these neural connections become, neuroplastically. We're not just talking about behavior, but a structural remodeling of how a man perceives intimacy, reward, and connection. This also affects the systems that create safety, empathy, and attachment. Oxytocin, the hormone released during touch, eye contact, and vulnerable closeness, gets less and less room. When sex is no longer linked to trust but to thrills, it is reduced to a performance act. Feelings that should be an anchor instead become a threat, and the woman, consciously or unconsciously, risks becoming a tool to regulate inner anxiety or emptiness, rather than an equal companion in presence and connection. The brain's dopamine system is not only biological, it is also psychological. It reflects what you value, what you repeat, and what you allow to shape you. When the dopamine system is overstimulated by superficial stimuli, quick rewards without substance, the brain loses its ability to feel deep satisfaction in things that require patience, vulnerability, and emotional presence. Research in neuroscience and affective psychology clearly shows this leads not only to desensitization, but also to dulled empathy, weakened sensitivity, and reduced capacity for emotional attachment. Intimacy is replaced by intensity, belonging by performance, connection by control. The man is shaped to react, not relate, to seek stimulation, not emotional resonance, and over time, he often loses touch with what makes him most human, his ability to meet, feel, and reflect others on a deep level. This is not a matter of morality or blame. It is a matter of self-awareness, of understanding that these patterns do not arise in a vacuum. They are shaped in a culture where quick gratification is often valued higher than long-term emotional integrity. But within this understanding lies a powerful possibility. You can change direction. The brain is plastic. It reshapes itself through habits, focus, and conscious choices. When you start choosing closeness over quick stimulation, real encounters over consumption, the dopamine system begins to reintegrate with other parts of the emotional system, such as oxytocin and serotonin. This creates not only balance but also meaning. This is also where the deeper turning point happens. Men who previously felt empty, fragmented, despite plenty of sexual validation, begin to feel something different. They begin to understand that strength does not lie in seducing more, but in understanding why they seek the way they do. For in understanding comes choice, and when you choose to meet instead of chase, to feel instead of control, something fundamental happens. You no longer need to hide behind the high. You begin to rest in yourself, in self-respect and emotional maturity. And then the way you meet women changes too, not as something to win, get, or experience, but as a fellow human being with an inner world as deep as your own. True freedom does not begin when you have access to many bodies, but when you can fully meet a single soul. It is there, in the quiet and unfiltered encounter, that you not only reach her, you reach yourself. When words stir emotions, the illusion of intimacy in written conversation. When we write to each other, especially at the beginning of a connection, something subtle yet powerful happens. The words we choose, how we express ourselves, the emojis we use, all of it becomes small signals, almost like a foreplay to intimacy. And when we feel that someone is present, curious, sharing personal thoughts, and reflecting our level of engagement, our brain begins to interpret it as emotional connection, as if something is growing. But what we rarely talk about is how quickly what we write can create an illusion of mutuality, of something that seems to be deepening. We mirror what we feel. We assume it's reciprocated because we get responses with the same energy, the same warmth, maybe even with a "I feel the same" or "you seem special." And that's where the danger lies, when someone later says, "I haven't felt anything romantic," or "I never thought of it that way," despite the fact that their way of writing communicated the exact opposite. Our inner logic crashes. Cognitive dissonance. There's a gap between what we experienced and what we now hear, not just as betrayal, but as a renegotiation of reality itself, because it's not about lies, it's about emotional inconsistency. Many people write impulsively, intuitively, in the moment, without realizing that their words, tone, and way of being are interpreted as closeness. They respond with heart emojis, deep conversations, late-night messages. They open doors without knowing if they're ready to step through them, and it leaves the other person with the feeling of having been genuine, open, transparent, only to realize that what they responded to might have just been a reflection, not a real feeling, as if they served as an emotional container, someone to vent to feel seen by, but never truly intended to be met on a deeper level. It's not just painful, it creates uncertainty, because we begin to wonder if we imagined everything, if we misread the signals, if we can no longer trust our intuition, and that causes more damage than the actual no. So what's the solution? It's not to stop feeling, it's not to stop writing, it's to start communicating with emotional integrity, to dare to be honest even in uncertainty, to say, "I enjoy talking to you, but I'm not sure yet what I feel," instead of creating an atmosphere that suggests too much, too soon. Because when you write with someone, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 weeks, you shape their inner image of how you see them. And that's a responsibility. A responsibility not to give more emotionally than you're actually prepared to stand behind. When we write, we awaken. When we share, we shape. And the least we can do is to be aware of the impact our words have on the other person. True love, from projections to genuine connection. When we meet someone who makes us light up, our brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that drives addiction. Butterflies in the stomach, a racing heart. It feels like love, but often it's not love, it's biology. The reward system reacts. Evolution whispers, "This person looks healthy, strong, fertile. Pay attention." We are drawn to symmetry in faces, pitch of voices, and scents we barely notice. But attraction is not only physical, it is also personal, psychological, and cultural. Here lies an intellectual paradox. As soon as we start thinking in terms of a serious relationship, our way of seeing the other person changes. The subconscious activates old patterns, and we interpret through a filter of past experiences, fears, and unmet needs. We don't always see the person in front of us. We see a projection of what we hope they will be. The intense feeling of attraction, often perceived as magic, sometimes reveals itself as a reflection of our own wounds. The stronger our longing for love, the greater the risk that we don't truly see the other person as they are. We idealize, romanticize, and chase the feeling of euphoria. The brain, hijacked by the limbic system, silences logic, and we make decisions based on craving rather than clarity. This phenomenon is called the halo effect. We see what we want to see, blinded by beauty or chemistry. We confuse thrilling intensity with genuine presence, where one gives us a rush and the other gives us safety. It is often in friendship, where no demands or roles govern, that we glimpse the real, where boundaries are set naturally, where we dare to be vulnerable, where trust grows alongside understanding. In such a relationship, emotional defenses are lower, not because we don't care, but because we don't project as much. Therefore, such a relationship rests on mutual respect, not unconscious needs. Attachment theory shows that true love is built on exactly this: vulnerability, being seen, truly, and yet accepted. But if we don't know who we are ourselves, we will adapt. We play roles, seek approval instead of creating authentic contact. Sex without connection feels empty. Love without self-awareness becomes unstable. Because love is not found, it is created. Through honesty, through presence, through emotional intimacy. It is when we let go of the chase for the perfect relationship and instead seek the depth in genuine meeting, without preconceived notions or need for validation, that the true potential of the relationship grows. It is only when we allow ourselves to be free from these mental constructs, especially in friendships where no hidden agendas or expectations underlie our interaction, that emotional clarity and mutual understanding can arise. A genuine relationship is not based on romantic fantasies, but on presence and openness. And when we dare to meet in this simplicity, without the chase for perfection, we can create something real. I see you, and I am here. In this process lies the possibility for mutual respect and intimacy, no longer resting on projected needs, but on a genuine connection between two people growing together. So next time you face a crossroads in love, in relationships, or in life, ask yourself, do I want to feel good for a moment, or do I want to grow together with someone who dares to be real? Because true love doesn't just feel good, it heals. Meeting beyond our filters, on emotional bonding, self-awareness, and the illusion of closeness. Can a person truly form a deeper emotional connection within the first couple of dates? Or is what we initially experience more a reflection of our impressions and internal projections than genuine connection? From a neuropsychological and emotional perspective, we know that humans process new experiences primarily through emotional mechanisms. Our first responses are shaped not by logic, but by fears, defense mechanisms, and old wounds, long before cognitive interpretations even begin to form. Attachment theory shows us that our early relational experiences, especially from childhood, create internal working models that shape how we interpret and bond with others. This raises the question, do we meet the other person as they are, or through a filter colored by past experiences and unconscious defense strategies? When this filter is active, we risk misinterpreting the other's expressions, not based on what is actually happening in the present, but as an emotional reflex from the past. We believe we're reading reality, but often, we're just replaying our own inner stories. This is why many romantic relationships fall apart early, while friendships are often allowed to grow slowly but more deeply. Friendship doesn't demand performance. There, time, presence, and acceptance coexist. But dating culture says something else: to be vigilant, to scan for red flags, to protect oneself. This mindset activates our sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, hypervigilance, and shuts the door to real intimacy. We forget that emotions are signals, not truths. Emotional intelligence is not about always understanding others. It's first about understanding ourselves, so we don't confuse our feelings with reality. A person who hasn't processed their own inner conflicts, guilt, grief, fear, or inadequacy, will struggle to meet others' emotions with empathy. We often avoid in others what we don't want to face in ourselves. And when someone expresses vulnerability, anger, or worry, our own unhealed wounds get triggered. Instead of holding space for the other, we create distance. Real closeness, therefore, doesn't just require good intentions. It demands the courage to face oneself. Only when we dare to remain in our own inner storms, without fleeing, denying, or projecting, can we be truly present in someone else's emotional landscape. Here, the difference between intention and feeling becomes crucial. Intention is will-driven, anchored in our values and desires. Emotions, however, are neurobiological responses. They indicate something, but not necessarily the truth. The problem arises when we confuse the two, when we believe our feelings confirm our intention. In reality, we may have good intentions, to love, to be honest, but still unconsciously project our needs, desires, or wounds onto the other. Then we don't see the person, we see our longing. This creates a psychological paradox. We think we seek authenticity, but interpret the other through our own filter. What we're attracted to may not be the actual person, but what that person represents in our inner world. And when we act from that illusion, a cognitive dissonance arises between our self-image and actual behavior. We believe we're being honest, but if our actions are driven by unconscious needs rather than clear self-awareness, the result becomes emotional manipulation, not out of malice, but from unawareness. That's why self-reflection is the most crucial component in any budding relationship. Only when we can separate our emotions from our values and see the other as an individual rather than a projection screen, can genuine connection emerge. Not quickly, not through intensity, but through presence, honesty, and the courage to stay when our own shadows appear. Then the relationship can become something more than a mirror. It can become real. In encounters between people, especially during the dating phase, there is a pivotal moment when the relationship changes. It can happen through physical closeness, like a kiss or sex, or when an emotional connection begins to form. Both of these moments require something vital: honesty and openness. Dating multiple people in the early stages isn't unusual, but when deeper feelings begin to grow in one person, while the other is still exploring, a responsibility arises. A responsibility to communicate clearly and respectfully. It's not about feeling too much, but about showing respect for both one's own and the other's emotions. If someone starts developing feelings without knowing the other is still seeing others, silence becomes a betrayal. It's not just an omission. It can become a form of emotional neglect. In some cases, it may even feel like emotional infidelity, because when emotions are involved, it's not just our actions that matter, but also what we choose not to say. 3 scenarios for the outcome of love, on emotional resonance, potential, and imbalance. Scenario 1. Full emotional and intellectual resonance. When an emotionally intelligent man seeks a woman with a corresponding level of emotional intelligence, and when this woman in turn is drawn to a man who is not only emotionally intelligent but also emotionally mature, a deep symmetry arises. Here, two individuals meet who are whole in themselves, with the capacity for self-reflection, empathy, and vulnerability. Their relationship is not about being healed by the other, but about a conscious interplay where both contribute to a present, harmonious, and evolving union. In this dynamic, love is built on mutual presence, not on trying to fill voids or seek validation at the expense of the other's integrity. Research in psychology shows that couples with high emotional intelligence tend to have better conflict resolution, greater ability to express needs and listen actively, deeper emotional intimacy and trust, lower risk of codependency or emotional manipulation. All the fundamental psychological conditions are in place to build a sustainable and loving relationship where both partners can grow together without losing themselves. Scenario 2. Conscious. Potential in motion. Navigating confusion, avoidant behavior, and the healing process in relationships. In this scenario, two individuals meet, where at least one of them is actively engaged in a process of self-development. The emotionally intelligent man, who has cultivated strong inner resilience, looks beyond the need for his partner to be whole. He is capable of embracing a woman who is still on her healing journey, as long as she is actively committed to her inner work. Likewise, an emotionally intelligent woman does not seek a perfect man, but values a partner who is willing to grow and evolve. When a person carries unresolved wounds from the past, every new relationship becomes a potential arena where those wounds can be triggered. It's not a matter of someone being undeserving of love. All human beings possess inherent worth and a right to unconditional acceptance. The problem lies in the fact that someone still entangled in their own pain may, often unconsciously, recreate destructive patterns. This can harm both themselves and the other person, despite the best intentions. This type of relationship holds great potential for mutual growth, but it is crucial that no one compromises their own emotional boundaries in the hope of saving the other. For the relationship to succeed, it requires continuous presence, mutual respect, and the ability to set and uphold boundaries. The danger zone arises when one person starts sacrificing their own needs in an effort to fix the other, which can lead to imbalance and codependency. In a relationship where the emotional dynamic is unbalanced, where the direction differs, where one person may be ready to give and receive deep love, while the other is still battling their inner world, a silent yet powerful friction emerges. Feelings then begin to be experienced at the cost of self-worth. One partner might love unconditionally, while the other, trapped in their defense mechanisms, is unable to receive or return love on the same level. Communication becomes laced with misunderstandings and unspoken fears, where words are sometimes used more to protect oneself than to connect. In a healthy relationship, it is not two perfect people who meet, but two individuals who are aware of their patterns, traumas, and needs, and who are willing to take responsibility for their own healing. It is not the partner's job to be a therapist, savior, or project manager for someone else's emotional process. At the same time, there is beauty in growing together, but this can only happen in an environment where both individuals feel safe, heard, and seen. Otherwise, the relationship risks stagnation, not due to a lack of love, but because the pain demands self-protection over openness. It may become necessary to withdraw, not as an act of betrayal, but as a way to preserve one's emotional integrity. To stay and compromise one's own feelings, one's own soul, would be to slowly erode one's identity. When someone in such a situation apologizes, it can therefore be complex. Sometimes the apology is genuine, rooted in awareness of having hurt the other, but often the apology hides a deeper inner conflict, an unconscious struggle between guilt, shame, and self-preservation. The person carrying inner division may not fully understand what they are apologizing for, only that something broke, something they neither fully comprehend nor control. For a relationship to remain healthy, both partners need constant emotional presence, mutual respect for boundaries, clear communication, a shared willingness to grow together. Without these components, the relationship risks becoming unbalanced, despite good intentions. But when two souls meet, ready to take responsibility for their lives and their healing, what arises is not perfection, but something far more valuable, a genuine, deep and living relationship. Scenario 3. Emotional imbalance and destructive dynamics. When a woman with unresolved wounds and lacking self-awareness seeks out an emotionally intelligent man who lacks emotional resilience, the risk is high that she, consciously or unconsciously, will drain him of his strength. In his attempt to save her, he sacrifices his emotional stability. Similarly, the same destructive pattern emerges when an unhealed man seeks out a woman with emotional depth, but without protective resilience. she will slowly be depleted by his inner chaos. This creates a dangerous and draining dynamic where one partner uses the relationship to regulate their own emotional needs, while the other, driven by empathy, falls into the role of the rescuer. The result is a loss of self-integrity for both. One is drained of energy, the other loses respect not only for their partner, but also for themselves. What begins as a subtle pattern often leads to emotional exhaustion, guilt, or bitterness. To prevent this, both partners must take a step back and reflect on their own emotional needs, protect their emotional well-being, avoid entering a relationship in hopes of saving or being saved. Love can never replace inner work, and without self-awareness and resilience on both sides, the relationship becomes more of a battlefield than a sanctuary. This scenario illustrates that a healthy and lasting relationship is not built on predictability or logic, but rather on the unpredictable element of timing. The only healthy choice is to take a step back, to protect both yourself and your partner. When love is allowed to mature, on time, freedom, and loyalty in a deepened relationship. In a world that's constantly rushing forward, where validation, closeness, and safety are expected to be delivered instantly, we've begun to treat even the most sacred of bonds as if they were items in a convenience store. But true love, it cannot be rushed. It doesn't follow our schedules. It follows our growth. Love is not just a meeting between two people. It is a reflection of who we are, where we are in life, and most importantly, how deeply we dare to face ourselves. It requires patience, emotional maturity, and an understanding that not every not now means never. Sometimes we're simply not ready, not yet, and that's not about waiting passively, as if love might one day fall from the sky. It's about waiting actively, continuing to grow, continuing to live, continuing to build a life that reflects the person you truly want to be. Not to be chosen by someone else, but to choose yourself. Because true love begins there, in our self-respect, in our ability to stand strong, even in solitude. Only then can we meet someone else with presence, not as a savior, but as an equal. And when you do meet someone who has also walked that path, something profoundly beautiful happens. You don't just meet a partner, you meet a soul companion, a person who chooses you, not for your surface, not for what you can offer, but for who you are at the core of your being. Someone whose love doesn't waver when life gets rough. Someone who sees your strength even when you doubt it yourself. Someone who stays, time and time again. But what defines such a relationship? It's loyalty. The quiet, unwavering devotion. The kind of loyalty that doesn't demand control, but rests in trust. Security in a relationship doesn't come from limiting the other. It isn't born from surveillance, jealousy, or demands. It's born from trust, from freedom, from mutual respect. When two people are emotionally mature, they understand that self-expression isn't always about someone else. That a photo shared, a moment of confidence, isn't a cry for outside validation, but a reflection of inner balance. In such a relationship, there's no need to cling. Space is given, growth is encouraged, both together and individually, because it's precisely there, in freedom, that loyalty reveals its true worth. And if you have such a person by your side, someone who sees you, trusts you, and lets you be free without letting go, then you have found something priceless. Their presence is not just love, it is stability. Their loyalty is not a burden, it is a blessing. But remember, love like this doesn't happen by accident. It is shaped, it is tested, it is refined through life's pain, its pauses, and through healing processes that aren't always visible. It's not a love that demands perfection. It's a love that allows humanity, that loves with, not despite, your weaknesses. So, what does it take to be worthy of such love? It takes the willingness to give what you seek, the willingness to hold an inner space open, where both you and the other can fully exist, where you don't just share love, but build a life worth sharing. So, hold them, But don't hold them back. Let them blossom, and let yourself grow. Because the most powerful love is born in the meeting point between freedom and loyalty, where self-respect walks hand in hand with tenderness, where you are not just loved, you are seen, chosen, and never alone. To understand the complexity of relationships, from attachment to self-awareness. After a breakup, it is not uncommon for someone to try to reconnect, not out of ill will, but as a reflection of unresolved emotional needs. The longing for security, fear of loneliness, or a subconscious desire for reconciliation can drive this behavior. Psychologically, it often involves attachment wounds and an internal tug-of-war between the need for closeness and the fear of vulnerability. But even well-intentioned reconnection can reactivate destructive patterns if both parties have not done genuine inner work. Sometimes this shows itself through contradictions. Someone who initially seems open suddenly withdraws. This is rarely intentional ignoring, but an emotional reflex. Avoidance that protects against overwhelming feelings like guilt, anxiety, or fear of failing again. It is an expression of trauma whispering, "If I get too close, it hurts too much." In our time, where superficial contacts and emotional immediacy are often prioritized, self-reflection becomes crucial. When we act on impulses rather than our values, cognitive dissonance arises, the inner conflict that drives us to justify our actions instead of acknowledging our inner truth. This risks distorting our perception of reality and weakening the connection with our inner compass. This is clearly noticeable in relationships. We often confuse strong chemistry with authenticity, longing with love, control with care. In our thirst to be seen, we ignore warning signs. But relationships are not just about the other person. Every dynamic also reflects something within us. Maturity arises when we stop blaming others and start examining ourselves. Many relational patterns originate from childhood attachment, and if we do not become aware of them, we risk repeating them, regardless of partner. We sometimes believe that someone else will heal our inner emptiness, but no one can replace the relationship we have with ourselves. True love requires self-awareness and courage, to stay present with what hurts, to admit when we have compromised our values, to understand when what we experience does not align with our truth. Words can deceive, but actions always reveal the truth. A genuine relationship is not an escape from oneself, but a reflection of inner maturity. It arises between two whole individuals who do not try to save each other, but grow together. It is built on freedom, trust, and mutual respect. Real love does not require losing ourselves. It encourages us to be more ourselves. So the next time you face a relationship choice, do not just ask what the other person is doing, but what you feel inside yourself. Do you feel safe, free, true? Because it is there, in the alignment between values and experience, that love truly lives. And it is there, in harmony with ourselves, that everything else can begin to grow. The depths of love, walking together in self-awareness and freedom. Love is not just a feeling, it is a choice, a meeting, a journey. It is not born in perfection or ideals, but in the courage required to stand naked before each other, without guarantees. It is the willingness to be vulnerable, to stay present when it hurts, and to give without expecting anything in return. It is when two people meet with openness and presence, willing to understand themselves and each other deeply. But love requires more than longing. It demands work. The courage to face one's own wounds, confront fears, and not run from the patterns that block deeper connection. In every relationship where one person is open and secure, but the other swings between closeness and distance, imbalance and pain arise. Love means setting boundaries. To be able to say, "Here I am, and this is what I need to feel well." Healthy love requires presence and maturity. It is about growing together or apart, confronting one's patterns and flaws, and understanding that when someone asks for space, it is not always a withdrawal, but a loving act to avoid losing oneself. Because love requires presence, a presence that is not in the past or future, but here and now. When we are with someone without filters or agendas, something real emerges. At the same time, relationships demand emotional readiness and self-awareness. Love is a powerful catalyst for change, but for healing to occur, the individual must be willing to traverse their inner landscapes of fear, guilt, and pain. Love cannot heal all wounds, but it can offer a safe place for healing if the individual is ready. Our own beliefs in hope and change remind us that people are capable of growing, maturing, and breaking old patterns. But this must come from within, not as a response to someone else's love. The greatest proof of love is accepting that sometimes someone must walk their path alone before they can meet you in the place where both can be free and whole. Love is not about saving someone from their wounds or needs, but about walking side by side, free and whole in themselves. It is about creating something authentic, where two souls meet without masks, to together create a meaningful relationship. So love, in its true form, is a balance of courage, mutual respect, and the willingness to grow. It is about being present in the moment, facing both pain and joy together, and never giving up on the possibility of finding a love that not only survives, but also deepens us. You say you're searching for something real, but you swipe on, project, and hide behind facades. But love doesn't live on the surface. It lives in the courage to show yourself where it hurts the most. In a time when perfection is sold as currency, vulnerability becomes a revolution. Only when you stop running from yourself can you meet someone who sees you, behind the armor, beyond the illusion. It is there, in the stillness of presence, that the real begins.